She stood at the kitchen island scrolling her phone while I spread out the resort brochures like a man laying out blueprints for his own funeral. 23 years running crane at Stevenson Construction, and I'd finally scraped together enough overtime pay for something that didn't smell like diesel fuel and broken dreams. "Anniversary's coming up," I said, sliding the glossy photos toward her. The paper felt expensive under my calloused fingers. "Look at this place. Private fishing charters, oceanfront cabins with actual room service. Real deal, not some weekend at the lake with a cooler full of Budweiser." Brooke didn't look up from whatever was lighting up her screen with that half smile she reserved for other people's jokes. Her manicured nails tapped against the granite countertop we'd saved 2 years to install, each tap like a tiny hammer on my skull. "I get seasick, remember? Besides, I burn easy. Skin cancer runs in my family. They have shade, sunscreen, indoor restaurants with air conditioning." Garrett, seriously. She finally glanced at the brochures like I'd shown her a dead possum. "I'm not doing the outdoorsy thing. Find something else." I picked up the reservation confirmation I'd printed that morning, the one that had cost me 6 months of Saturday overtime shifts. Non-refundable deposit, $5,000. Enough money to buy a decent used truck. Flushed down the drain because my wife couldn't be bothered to spend our anniversary somewhere that didn't have a shopping mall within walking distance. The humiliation hit my gut like a crane cable snapping under load. 15 years of marriage, and she couldn't fake enthusiasm for 5 minutes while I showed her something I'd worked my ass off to afford. "Fine," I said, folding the papers with hands that wanted to crush something. "I'll cancel it." She was already walking away, heels clicking on hardwood like a countdown timer. "Don't be dramatic, Garrett. Plan something I'd actually enjoy for once." That was Tuesday. Tuesday, when I still believed my wife's biggest flaw was being high maintenance. Tuesday, when I thought the worst thing about our marriage was her inability to appreciate a good fishing spot. By Friday, she was posting Instagram stories from what looked like the exact same resort I'd tried to book. Crystal blue water that belonged in a screensaver, white sand that probably cost more per square foot than my shop tools, fruity drinks with little umbrella garnishes that screamed, "Look how much money I'm not spending." The caption read, "Girls trip. Sometimes you just need to recharge. Wamj, blessed paradise. Oh, living my best life." I was eating a bologna sandwich in the cab of my crane, radio tuned to classic rock and my thermos full of coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago, when Shane Murphy climbed up with his smartphone and a shit-eating grin that meant my day was about to get worse. "Your wife's living like a queen," he said, showing me his phone. "Paige follows her Instagram. Thought you were supposed to be going fishing this weekend." I looked at the photo and felt something shift in my chest, like a load settling wrong on the rigging. Brooke in a bikini I'd never seen, sunglasses that cost more than my work boots, holding a drink that probably had a price tag with more digits than my hourly wage. The woman who claimed she couldn't handle a weekend at Lake Isabella was sipping cocktails in paradise. But it was the background that made my blood turn to concrete. Partially visible in the reflection of her sunglasses was a silver BMW with California plates. The same BMW I'd seen in my driveway 3 years back during a barbecue that now felt like evidence in a murder trial. Wesley Torres, the guy who sold luxury cars to people with more money than sense. The guy who wore cologne you could smell from across a construction site. The guy who used to be married to Sierra, the elementary school teacher who brought homemade cookies to neighborhood gatherings and asked genuine questions about other people's kids. "Thought she gets seasick," Shane said, watching my face like a man reading a pressure gauge. Apparently not. I climbed down from the crane on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, walked to my truck and sat behind the wheel, staring at that photo until the screen went dark. The timestamp said it was posted 2 hours ago, which meant while I was moving steel beams in 100-degree heat, my wife was getting a tan with her old boyfriend in a place that cost more per night than I made in a week. 23 years of getting up at 5 a.m. 23 years of mandatory overtime to pay for a house she filled with furniture we couldn't afford. 23 years of listening to her complain about my job, my friends, my hobbies, my inability to think bigger about life. And she'd rather spend my anniversary money on a tropical vacation with another man. The rage that hit me wasn't the hot, explosive kind that makes you punch walls or throw things. It was cold and methodical, like the feeling you get when you realize a piece of equipment is dangerous and needs to be taken out of service before it kills someone. Clinical, necessary. I didn't drive home immediately. Instead, I stopped at the 7-Eleven and bought a prepaid phone with cash, the kind they sell to people who have reasons for not wanting their conversations tracked. Then, I sat in the parking lot, watching traffic flow past, like my life was a movie, and I was the only one who knew how it was going to end. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Sierra Torres, the woman who'd been too good for Wesley 3 years ago and probably still was. The woman who thought her husband was at a mandatory sales conference in San Diego, probably wondering why he hadn't called to check in. The phone rang twice before she answered with the cautious voice people use when they don't recognize the number. Hello? Sierra, this is Garrett Stevenson. We met a few years back at that barbecue. The silence stretched long enough for me to count the oil derricks on the horizon. 18, same number as years I'd been working construction before I met Brooke. Oh, hi Garrett, this is unexpected. I need to show you something. It's about Wesley and my wife. I know this sounds crazy, but he's on a business trip, she said quickly, like someone reading from a script. Conference in San Diego, last-minute booking by corporate. Sierra, I'm looking at a photo of him with Brooke in what looks like paradise, posted 2 hours ago on Instagram. The silence this time had weight to it, like the moment before a crane cable snaps and sends 1,000 pounds of steel crashing toward Earth. Can you send it to me? I forwarded the screenshot and waited, listening to her breathe through the phone like someone trying not to drown. The silence stretched until I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, steady as a jackhammer on concrete. That's his car in the background, she said finally, voice steady as a woman who'd spent 15 years teaching third graders not to panic during fire drills. Silver BMW, license plate 8 Charlie Victor 329. He told me the conference was mandatory, last-minute booking by corporate, very important client presentation. When did he leave? Wednesday morning. Kissed me goodbye at 6 a.m., said he'd miss me, promised to bring back something nice from the hotel gift shop. I stared out at the traffic on Highway 99, watching 18-wheelers haul freight between nowhere and somewhere else, and felt something click into place like a socket wrench finding the right bolt size. The kind of satisfaction you get when a piece of heavy machinery finally does exactly what it's designed to do. Sierra, can we meet somewhere? I think we need to talk. Where? Denny's on Ming Avenue, 1 hour. She was already sitting in a back booth when I walked in, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. Still pretty at 38, the kind of pretty that comes from being genuinely decent to people instead of spending 3 hours a day in front of a mirror. She looked up when I approached, eyes red but dry, like someone who'd used up all her tears before I got there. Show me the rest, she said without preamble. I slid my phone across the table. She scrolled through Brooke's Instagram story, with the methodical attention of someone grading papers, pausing at each photo, like she was checking for plagiarism. When she reached the video of Brooke laughing at something off camera, she stopped and replayed it twice. I can hear him, she said, in the background. That's his laugh. He does this thing where he snorts a little when he thinks something is really funny. I flagged down the waitress for coffee I didn't want, giving Sierra time to process what her marriage had just become. When I looked back, she was staring at a photo of Brooke and Wesley together, his arm around her waist, both of them grinning like teenagers who'd successfully shoplifted from the teacher's desk. She's wearing my necklace, Sierra said quietly. What? The gold chain with the little heart pendant. Wesley gave it to me for Christmas 2 years ago. Said it was special ordered from some boutique in San Francisco. Cost him a week's commission. She looked up at me with eyes that had gone from sad to something much more dangerous. How long have they been doing this? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Sierra leaned back in the booth, studying my face like she was deciding whether to trust me with her children's college fund. The fluorescent lights above us buzzed like angry wasps, casting shadows that made her look older and harder than the woman who used to bring homemade cookies to neighborhood barbecues. What do you want from me, Garrett? The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a controlled burn. I could have given her the easy answer. The one about mutual support and shared pain and working through this together like adults. Instead, I told her the truth. I want them to know that we know. I want them to understand exactly how stupid they think we are. and I want them to realize that the people they've been lying to aren't going to sit quietly while they make fools of us." She nodded once, decision made, like a judge signing a death warrant. "What do you need?" The next morning, I called in a personal day and drove to Torres Luxury Motors, the BMW dealership where Wesley worked his magic on people with more money than sense. The showroom was all glass and chrome and new car smell, the kind of place designed to make working guys like me feel small and out of place. I told the receptionist I was shopping for my wife, interested in whatever Wesley Torres might recommend for a woman who appreciated the finer things in life. She called him over with a smile that probably sold an extra $1,000 in extended warranties every month. Wesley Torres looked exactly like the kind of man who'd steal another man's wife and sleep like a baby afterward. Perfectly styled hair that probably required more products than Brooke's entire makeup collection. Expensive watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Handshake that lasted 3 seconds too long and felt like grabbing a dead fish. He didn't remember me from the barbecue 3 years back, which worked in my favor like having the wind at your back during a difficult crane operation. "Looking for something special for the lady?" he asked, guiding me toward a red convertible that cost more than I'd made in the past 2 years combined. "She likes luxury," I said, running my hand along the hood like I was petting a dangerous animal. "Just got back. From vacation, actually." Said she fell in love with the lifestyle. His smile flickered for just a second, like a light bulb with loose wiring. "Nice. Where'd you folks go?" "She went with friends, girls' trip to some tropical resort. Somewhere with white sand beaches and drinks that cost more than dinner. Sounds expensive." "It was, but she's worth it, you know. When you love someone, you want them to have nice things." I paused and looked directly at him. Even if it means working overtime for months to afford it. Something shifted in his expression, like a man who just realized he was standing on thin ice. That's very generous of you." I nodded and let him show me features I'd never be able to afford while I memorized his schedule, his mannerisms, the way he checked his phone every few minutes, like he was expecting news about a terminal diagnosis. By the time I left, I knew more about Wesley Torres than his own mother probably did. That afternoon, Sierra called me from the school parking lot. "He's home," she said, acting like nothing happened. "Brought me a snow globe from the San Diego airport gift shop. Still has the price tag on it, $4.99. "Where are you now?" "Sitting in my car, trying not to scream." "Meet me at that Denny's again. 30 minutes. This time, she was waiting with a manila folder, thick enough to choke a horse, an expression that would have made a loan shark nervous. "Bank statements," she said as I sat down, spreading papers across the table like a dealer running a high-stakes poker game. "Credit card bills, phone records, and hotel receipts going back 6 months. Guess what I found while he was in the shower, washing off his lies? She had highlighted charges in yellow marker with the precision of someone who'd spent years grading math tests. Hotel rooms in Fresno that coincided exactly with Brooke's client meetings. Dinners at restaurants I'd heard my wife mention but never been invited to. Gas stations near her real estate office at times when she claimed to be showing houses across town. But it was the jewelry purchases that made my vision go red around the edges. "Here's the really beautiful part," Sierra continued, pointing to a visa statement with her finger trembling just enough to show she was human. "He's been paying for everything. Hotels, restaurants, even her spa visits. Look at this one. $800 at that place where she gets her nails done, and her eyebrows shaped into perfect little question marks." I studied the dates, cross-referencing them with my own memory like a detective building a murder case. Every late night, Brooke claimed she was showing houses to picky clients. Every weekend, she said she was at continuing education seminars for real estate agents. Every Tuesday and Thursday when she came home smelling like expensive perfume and making excuses about traffic, the humiliation hit me. In waves, each one worse than the last. While I was working double shifts to pay for an anniversary trip she didn't want, she was letting another man wine and dine her with money he made selling cars to people like me. People stupid enough to believe their wives when they said they were working late. "How long you think this has been going on?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew. "Based on these receipts, at least 6 months, maybe longer." Sierra gathered the papers with the efficiency of someone who'd made peace with burning her life down and starting over. "The first charge I can find is from January, dinner at Giuseppe's, that Italian place downtown where they charge $40 for pasta. January. Right around the time Brooke started complaining that our marriage had gotten boring. Right around the time she started suggesting we needed more independence and personal space. Right around the time she started working late 3 nights a week and coming home with stories about difficult clients who only wanted to look at houses after normal business hours. "So, what's our next move?" Sierra asked, and I loved the way she said "our" like we were partners in something more important than shared misery. "We document everything, get proof they can't deny or explain away. Then we decide what we want our lives to look like without them." Sierra smiled for the first time since I'd called her, and it was sharp enough to cut glass. "I like the way you think." The investigation took 2 weeks of acting like everything was normal while methodically building a case that would have impressed a federal prosecutor. Sierra had the patience of someone who'd spent 15 years teaching children not to lie to her face, and I had the practical skills that came from operating machinery where one mistake could kill you. We divided the work like professionals. She handled the financial forensics, going through bank records and credit card statements with the attention to detail that made her an excellent teacher. I handled the physical surveillance using skills I'd learned hunting deer in the Sierras during hunting season. Patience, observation, staying invisible while you wait for your target to make the mistake that ends everything. They made it incredibly easy, like criminals who wanted to get caught. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Wesley would close the dealership early and drive to the Marriott downtown. Brooke would arrive 15 minutes later in her white Lexus, park on the opposite side of the lot like an amateur spy in a bad movie, and walk in through the side entrance wearing sunglasses indoors. I photographed everything with a telephoto lens I'd borrowed from Keith Rodriguez, who used it for wildlife photography on weekends. Timestamps that would hold up in court, license plates clear enough to read from 50 yards, shots of both of them entering and leaving together, Wesley's hand on the small of Brooke's, back like he owned her. The smoking gun came on a Thursday afternoon when they abandoned their usual hotel routine and drove toward the coast in Wesley's BMW. I followed at a distance, radio tuned to the CB channel truckers used to report speed traps, staying far enough back that they'd never notice a construction worker's pickup in their rearview mirror. They ended up at a seafood restaurant in Pismo Beach, the kind of place with cloth napkins and wine lists longer than my mortgage payment. I watched them through the window from my truck, taking photos as Wesley fed Brooke bites of lobster that probably cost more per ounce than my hourly wage. She laughed at his jokes with the same enthusiasm she used to reserve for me, back when we were young and stupid and thought love meant something more than convenient arrangements and shared mortgage payments. She touched his face the way she used to touch mine, before 15 years of marriage taught her that affection was something you ration like overtime pay. The vindictive satisfaction that washed over me was better than whiskey and more addictive than nicotine. They thought they were so clever, so careful, so much smarter than the blue-collar husband and the elementary school teacher they'd married when they still believed in settling down. But stupid people always underestimate the intelligence of people who work with their hands for a living. That night, Sierra and I met at her house after she'd put her kids to bed. We spread everything across her dining room table like generals planning a military campaign. Photos, bank statements, hotel receipts, phone records that painted a picture clearer than anything hanging in an art museum. "It's enough," she said, studying a particularly damning photo of Wesley kissing Brooke in the restaurant parking lot while seagulls watched like disapproving witnesses. "More than enough to bury them both. What do you want to do with it?" Sierra looked at me across the table, and I saw something in her expression that reminded me why I'd always respected her. She was the kind of woman who considered consequences, who thought things through, who didn't make decisions based on the first emotion that crossed her mind. "I want them to know exactly how stupid they think we are," she said quietly, "and I want them to understand that we're not." She pulled out her phone and started typing with the deliberate precision of someone crafting a resignation letter for a job that had been slowly killing her soul. "Wesley, I know about the Maldives. I know about the hotels in Fresno. I know about the restaurants and the jewelry and every lie you've told me for the past 6 months. The only question now is whether we handle this like adults, or whether you want to make it complicated and expensive for both of us." She showed me the message before sending it, and I felt a surge of admiration for this woman who could destroy a man's life in 3 sentences without using a single curse word. That's perfect, I said. Direct, factual, no room for bullshit negotiations. Your turn. I thought for a moment, then typed, Brooke, we need to talk. Tonight. Come home. Don't make me come looking for you. Darker than mine, Sierra observed. Different approaches for different people. Wesley responds to logic. Brooke responds to the threat of public embarrassment. We sent the messages at the same time, then sat back and waited like snipers who'd just taken their shots. Wesley called Sierra within 3 minutes. She let it go to voicemail, then played it back on speaker with a smile that could have frozen hellfire. Sierra, honey, I don't know what you think you know, but there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Call me back right away. We can work this out. I love you. This is all it's complicated, but I can explain everything if you'll just talk to me. The desperation in his voice was sweeter than any dessert I'd ever tasted. This was a man who'd spent months thinking he was smarter than everyone around him, suddenly realizing he'd been playing chess with people who knew the rules better than he did. Brooke took longer to respond. 47 minutes by my count, probably spent crafting lies and trying on different versions of innocent confusion. When she finally called, I answered on the first ring. What's this about? She asked, using that carefully controlled tone she reserved for conversations with her mother and traffic cops. Come home, Brooke. We'll discuss it face to face like married adults. I'm at a client meeting. No, you're not. You're at Wesley Torres's house. You've been there since 6:30. His silver BMW is in the driveway next to your white Lexus, and there's a light on in what I assume is his bedroom window. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear her breathing change, shifting from confident to something that sounded like a small animal, realizing it was trapped in a corner. Garrett, come home. 1 hour. We have 15 years of marriage to discuss. I hung up and looked at Sierra, who was watching me with something that might have been professional admiration. Think she'll show? She'll show. She's going to try to control the narrative, make this about my trust issues or her need for independence. But she'll show because the alternative is having this conversation in public, and Brooke would rather die than be embarrassed in front of people who matter to her career. Sierra gathered the photos into a neat stack and slid them into the manila folder, and Wesley will try to convince me that this is all some kind of midlife crisis, that he loves me, that it didn't mean anything because his heart never left home. You ready for that performance? I've been ready for months. I just didn't know it until now. Brooke walked into our house at 9:47 p.m., keys jingling, like wind chimes in a thunderstorm, heels clicking on hardwood, with that particular rhythm that meant she was nervous but trying to project confidence. She'd changed clothes since I'd seen her at Wesley's house, trading the tight dress for jeans and a sweater that made her look like someone's harmless suburban mother. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the manila folder closed in front of me like a sealed indictment. She set her purse on the counter and turned to face me with her arms crossed, chin slightly raised in the defiant posture she'd perfected over 15 years of smaller arguments. So, she said, what's this dramatic summons about? I opened the folder and slid the first photograph across the table, Wesley feeding her lobster at the Pismo restaurant, both of them laughing like teenagers who'd successfully ditched school to go to the beach. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, calculation, defiance, then something that looked almost like relief, as if she was tired of carrying the weight of all those lies. We need to talk about Wesley Torres, I said. It's not what you think. The words came out automatically, like a recorded message, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What do I think, Brooke? She sat down across from me, automatically smoothing her sweater in the gesture she had used since our first date when she was nervous about meeting my parents. You think I'm having an affair? I slid the second photo across, Wesley's hand on her back as they entered the Marriott, caught in perfect focus with a timestamp that would hold up in any court in California. Am I wrong? It's complicated. No, I said, pulling out the bank statement Sierra had copied for me. It's actually pretty simple. 6 months of hotel rooms charged to his credit card, restaurant bills that add up to more than we spend on groceries in 3 months, jewelry purchases that coincidentally match things you've been wearing lately. I showed her the resort photos from her own Instagram account, printed out and arranged chronologically like evidence in a murder trial, her face in every shot, Wesley visible in the backgrounds and reflections, that stolen necklace glinting in the tropical sunlight like a confession. You turned down our anniversary trip because you get seasick and burn easily. Then you went to the exact same kind of place with him, posted it on social media, and expected me to be too stupid to notice. Brooke stared at the evidence spread across our kitchen table, like scattered pieces of a life she'd thought she could keep secret forever. When she looked up, her defiance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like disappointment that I'd turned out to be smarter than she'd given me credit for. How long have you known? 2 weeks of absolute certainty. 4 months of suspicion that you kept telling me was paranoia. Are you going to yell, make a scene, act like some kind of victim? I studied her face, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger who happened to know where I kept my spare keys. No, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I want honest answers. First question, do you love him? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands like they held the answer to a question she'd been avoiding for months. When she finally looked up, her eyes had the flat honesty of someone who'd stopped pretending. Yes. Second question, do you love me? Another pause, longer this time. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the neighbor's dog barking, the sound of my marriage ending with less drama than a burnt dinner. I did, for a long time. But no, not anymore. I nodded and started gathering the photographs with the same methodical care I used when cleaning my tools at the end of a long day. Then, we don't have anything to fight about. We don't? The confusion in her voice was almost comical. She'd probably rehearsed for tears and accusations, dramatic speeches about forgiveness and second chances. She hadn't prepared for a husband who treated their divorce like a business transaction. You want to be with Wesley. I want to be with someone who wants to be with me. Seems pretty straightforward to a simple construction worker. Brooke looked genuinely bewildered, like I'd violated some unwritten rule about how these conversations were supposed to go. So what happens now? Now you pack whatever you want to keep and find somewhere else to live. I'll file the papers Monday. We'll split things fairly. Savings, retirement accounts, the furniture you bought that I never liked anyway. But I'm keeping the house, the truck, and my tools. That's it? No yelling? No begging me to stay? Brooke, you've been fucking another man for 6 months and lying to my face every single day. You spent our anniversary money on vacation with him while telling me I was getting needy for wanting to spend time with my own wife. I closed the folder with a snap that sounded like a coffin lid. What exactly would I be begging you to stay for? She sat there for another minute, maybe waiting for the emotional explosion she'd been bracing for. When it didn't come, she stood up and walked toward the stairs with shoulders that looked lighter than they had in months. Garrett, yeah? For what it's worth, I am sorry. About the lying, I mean. You didn't deserve that part. No, I agreed. I didn't. After she went upstairs to pack, I texted Sierra. How did it go with Wesley? Her response came back immediately. Better than expected. He cried actual tears, asked if we could go to marriage counseling, promised he'd never see her again if I'd just give him another chance. What did you tell him? I told him I'd rather go to counseling with someone I could trust. The next morning, Brooke loaded her Lexus with suitcase after suitcase while I drank coffee on the front porch and watched the sun come up over the oil derricks that had been part of my view for 15 years. She didn't ask for help carrying anything, and I didn't offer. Before she drove away, she rolled down her window one last time. The house will be too big for just you, she said. Maybe I won't be living here alone. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe? Or the first genuine pang of regret I'd seen from her. Sierra Torres? Sierra Torres. Brooke nodded once, put the car in drive, and pulled out of the driveway without looking back. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete silence in my own head. That afternoon, Sierra called me from her empty house. Wesley moved out this morning, took his clothes, his golf clubs, and his collection of self-help books about becoming a better salesman. Left everything else, including a note saying he hoped someday I'd understand that what we had was special. How are you feeling? Honestly, like I've been holding my breath for 6 months and can finally exhale. She paused, and I could hear her moving around, probably cleaning up the debris of a marriage that had been over long before either of them admitted it. What about you? Same. Listen, you want to get dinner tonight? Somewhere nice? somewhere we don't have to hide in back booths or whisper about other people's secrets. I'd like that, but Garrett? Yeah, let's go somewhere they've never been, somewhere that's just ours from the beginning. 6 months later, Sierra and I were sitting on the deck of a cabin I'd rented at Lake Isabella, watching the sun set over water that didn't belong to anyone but God and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. She was grading spelling tests while I cleaned the bass we'd caught that morning. 2 decent-sized fish that would make a perfect dinner for 2 people who'd learned the difference between settling and choosing. You know what's funny? She said, looking up from a 3rd grader's attempt to spell democracy. What? Wesley sent me a friend request on Facebook yesterday. I looked up from the filleting knife, amused. What did you do? Declined it. But I was curious, so I looked at his public page. She set down her red pen and turned to face me. He's dating some 22-year-old who works at a juice bar and posts motivational quotes about manifesting abundance. Good for him. And Brooke? What about her? She's engaged to some guy who owns a chain of furniture stores. They're planning a destination wedding in Costa Rica and registered for gifts at stores that don't even exist in Bakersfield. I finished cleaning the fish and rinsed my hands in the lake water. The sun was painting everything gold, the kind of light that makes you believe the world might actually be a beautiful place if you're standing in the right spot with the right person. Good for her, too. Sierra smiled and went back to her grading. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd never found out? If we'd just stayed married to them and pretended everything was fine until we were too old to start over? I thought about that question while watching an osprey circle overhead, hunting for its own dinner with the patience of a predator who understood that good things come to those who wait for the right moment. No, I said finally. I don't wonder about that at all. That evening, after we'd eaten the bass and Sierra had finished correcting papers, we sat on the dock with our feet in the water and talked about real plans made by adults who'd learned that love isn't something you fall into by accident. It's something you choose every day with someone who chooses you back. I love you, she said as we walked toward the cabin, her hand warm in mine. I love you too. Think we would have found each other if none of this had happened? I squeezed her fingers and looked up at stars you can only see when you're far enough away from city lights and other people's drama to remember that the universe is bigger than your problems. Maybe, but I'm glad we didn't have to wait that long. Inside the cabin, Sierra made tea while I built a fire in the stone fireplace. We sat on the couch with her head on my shoulder, watching flames dance like they were celebrating something, 2 people who discovered that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting everything you actually wanted all along.